Welcome to the Men's Divorce Podcast, presented by the domestic litigation firm Cordell Cordell, a partner men can count on. Now, here's your host, Managing Partner and CEO of Cordell Cordell, Scott Trout.
All right, hey out there, this is Scott Trout, CEO and Managing Partner of Cordell Cordell, a domestic litigation firm, now in our 30th year, advising men before, during, and after divorce. As you all know, we're the largest domestic firm in the country, as well as now we are in the UK. And we're excited to continue our podcast. And now, more than ever, we have a topic that is so relevant to guys out there. And we thought we'd just spend just a few moments today talking about COVID, the coronavirus, and how it affects custody and all those complicated matters across the country. And so I have joining me today Charles Hatley, who's a litigation manager in our Virginia Beach office. Charles is licensed in Virginia and Washington, D.C. And welcome, Charles. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Scott. How are you been today?
Well, good. So, Charles, Charles and I were talking earlier, and we just really thought we could spend some time helping guys out there in this few moments that we have, because everyone's got questions. We're in a moment where no one knows what's next. I've, in my lifetime, and 52 years old, I've never seen anything like this, and I have questions, and I know guys out there have similar things, and they're going through a stressful moment, and now we're just adding more stress to it. And so let's talk about custody, and especially in markets across the country where we have shelter in place, we have courts that are closing. Guys are wanting to know what that impact is on them. What does that mean for them? And what are their rights? What can they do? There's just so many questions for guys. And, when you're listening to this, I would encourage you to go back and listen to our national webinar that we talked about COVID and its impact on divorce and guys considering divorce and post-divorce. So you can go YouTube that and find that information out there. But, Charles, I thought what I'd start with is what we see is, we have these divided homes. And it's complicated when we have shelter-in-place orders where, we're saying, hey, don't leave your home or only do it for essential travel for the things like food and medicine and healthcare. Schools are closing. So can guys out there, they're sitting here listening thinking, I haven't seen my kids. I can maybe, call them or email, and my wife or ex-wife isn't letting me video them or FaceTime. Can guys get access to the courts if they need it? I mean, what's available to them right now? Because some lawyers out there don't even know what's available. We're just reading orders as they come down. Kind of just generally say, hey, what can guys do right now?
Right now, it is a very difficult time. What we're seeing, as Scott said, was a closure in the court systems, but the court systems are not completely closed. Most of the court systems available to us have remained open for emergency situations. And what that looks like, an emergency situation with your children, what that looks like is a situation where you believe that their health or safety is in danger somehow. So going to the court and saying my ex-spouse is blocking my access to my child, it's a tenuous grasp on an emergency situation. But it is important to bring up in any situation that the children are really what's being impacted here. When you're trying to have children at home, when you have a mother who may be still working and going out into society every day and, making the child, exposing the child to her going out to society, it may be an emergency for the court to consider that the child may be better off returning to the normal custody and visitation order rather than just having one parent unilaterally deciding that what it should be.
So when we think about these emergency motions, Charles, guys, they shouldn't, I assume, and obviously let me step back for a moment. When we talk, since I'm licensed in Missouri, Illinois, and Georgia, and Charles, you're licensed in Virginia and D.C., and I know we've got listeners from around the country, we don't want you to think of this as legal advice because it's not. What we want to do is create some talking points for you and some action points so that you take action, you do something, and that's really leading into my next question is most guys are thinking, do I need to do something? I haven't seen my kids in 10 days. And if I do, you mentioned emergency motions. What are those? And again, should I be taking steps right now or do I just wait this out?
That is a tough question. The emergency motion is a quicker route into court. It's going to court saying there is some big problem that I think this court needs to address on a very quick timetable. And they're so important that even though we have these shelters in place, here in Virginia and Washington, D.C., the courts have remained open for those emergency motions. Prior to filing an emergency motion, one of the most important things that we can try to do is keep the lines of communication open. That's easier said than done. When one party refuses to cooperate in keeping the lines of communication open, you still want to try. Mm-hmm. And if your communication is being blocked, you may want to start trying through methods that are written, text messages, emails, something that you can later on hold in your hand and show to somebody, look, I was trying to see my child. I have this right here in my hand showing that there were no responses or that I wasn't allowed to see my child. And maybe being able to show that to the court would help prove your case a little better.
So we talk about communication, and it weaves into, I kind of alluded to it earlier, about keeping a diary or a log or a calendar. Should guys get more, let's just make the assumption here, that we have divided homes, mom's refusing to provide some sort of any routine, regular in-person contact, not related to medical symptoms, right? So should a guy, keep a diary, and should they kind of put together more of a regular routine so it's not affecting the kids? So that, hey, I call every night at 5, or we FaceTime every night at 5. I call them in the morning, or I email this day. And what should they be doing, and how does that help them at the end of the day when they go back to court?
Keeping a diary is very important. When you go back to court and you're trying to remember that on March 21st you made a phone call and mom told you that you weren't allowed to talk to the child, it's going to be hard to recall that in a month or 3 weeks or 2 weeks or however long it takes to get back in court. And acting with regularity gives you credence to the claim that I was doing this just to try to speak to my child. Calling every day at 5 p.m. to try to speak to your children, or FaceTiming every day at 5 p.m. and being denied that access allows you to present a case that says, look, I was trying everything I know. I was trying consistency for my children. I was trying to be there for my children, and I was just around the horn being blocked by the other parent.
Mm-hmm. So, I assume that this is the kind of stuff where guys are going to think, okay, I've been denied custody. Does it really matter? Is a judge going to care at the end of the day? Let's say, everything passes, the states and the country opens back up, the court system's back up and running. We are in a new normal. But, guys are going to say, hey, Charles, do judges really care what happened here, and is it worth it?
I believe judges are absolutely going to care. Obviously, again, this is a new threshold that we're crossing here with this pandemic, but I believe that judges will absolutely care, especially in situations where there were previously entered custody and visitation orders. Judges never like it when one party decides to ignore what the court said. And most custody and visitation orders, although they may not have covered a pandemic, do cover situations when the children are out of school for snow days or holidays or other periods of time. And most parents are granted, a lot of parents are granted joint legal custody. And joint legal custody is extremely important in this scenario because it forces the parents to work together to decide what's in the best interest for the children's health, safety, and welfare. It is not a unilateral decision just to be made by the parent who physically has the children at the time.
It's a good point about the legal custody because it's often overlooked by guys out there. They're thinking right now, and the first thing in their mind is, I haven't seen my kid. But one of the things that guys are probably having happen to them, especially if there's a medical crisis, is their legal rights are being stripped of them by being failed to consult and confer with. So what should guys do in this situation? Let's just talk about real quickly, and then we'll jump back into custody regular. What should guys be doing on the legal side about, the decision-making process for health and education and general welfare?
On the legal side, again, it's important to try to keep an open line of communication with the other parent, being involved, reaching out to the children's school, saying, okay, if your child is out of school, if there hasn't been a school closure, getting the lesson plan, making sure you're well apprised of the lesson plan so that you can speak with the other parent about what the child needs to be doing on a day-to-day basis. If the child has some sort of extraordinary medical situation which causes the child to be higher risk right now, reaching out to the child's doctor to say, okay, what can I do to be better prepared as a parent? How can I manage my household and my cleanliness and my contacts with other people so that my child can best fare in this situation? and just overall being involved, having an open line of communication, and doing everything you possibly can just to stay involved in the life of the child.
Yeah, I would say even just dropping emails to your spouse, your ex-spouse, saying, hey, I know, and if something happens, I want to be informed, I want to help, I want to be there to make decisions. It's one of those things, just being about proactivity and just making assumptions that you're going to send the email and not necessarily trying to be combative, as you suggest, Charles. Great idea about keeping the line of communications open. So we have summer, we have Easter coming up for some. What should guys be doing proactively in advance? We're about 2 weeks away approximately from Easter, a little bit more than that. What should they be doing if they're court ordered to have scheduled custody, or they want to have some time over Easter, and especially with the 12 weeks in the summer coming up, presumably? What should guys be doing now? I know it's communication, but is there value in taking some proactive steps now to try to work out some sort of schedule, assuming that this new normal stays in place, which we all hope and pray it doesn't, but what should they be doing proactively?
Proactively, again, staying in the same line of communication, reach out to the other parents, say, look, Easter is my holiday and it's coming up, and this is what I would like to do. And this is my summer schedule coming up, and this is what I expect. I expect for this to be followed. And if you get a response from the other parent that says, no, I'm not going to allow you to have your holiday, or no, I'm not going to allow you to exercise your visitation or your time over the summer, it may be necessary to start reaching out and exploring the options that we have with our court system. As I said earlier, the judges are not going to look kindly upon one parent unilaterally subverting another parent's rights to their children, both physical and legal rights that they have at this time.
So you talk about getting the court involved, and typically guys are out there thinking, well, I'm calling the police. Is there any value in seeking assistance of law enforcement trying to exercise your rights?
That is a controversial idea in Virginia and D.C. and pretty much everywhere else I've talked to anybody. Is getting the police involved is always iffy. The reality is the police are not going to go inside of the other parent's home and physically remove the child. They're not going to exercise that court order to any point where you're happy that you call the police. And it's likely going to cause much more strife on down the road with the other parent that you did call the police. However, when the police arrive, they're going to make a report of the denial of the date of where they went, and there's probably going to be body cam footage, or maybe body cam footage, of how the other parent reacted. So while it may be used against you that you called the police, that you involved the police and had your child witness that, there may be evidence created by the other parent's reactions towards the police that may be useful. All that being said, I think keeping the police out of it at this juncture would likely be the best route to go, as the court system is they're not going to look kindly upon one parent subverting the other parent's rights, but they're going to expect that there will be a little bit of understanding, cooperation, and not involving the police when we have so many other things going on.
Right. It's equally as important to be proactive, in terms of enforcing your rights, as it is to perhaps making changes around your own home for guys out there, right? Like who visits and friends and safety precautions. What could they be doing at home? Because I always say it's about appearance and preparation for guys, and that is, you're under a microscope, and probably even more so now because we have a potentially deadly virus out there that could, create havoc in families and create medical conditions. So it's now more important for guys. Maybe just kind of quickly go through what should guys be doing around the home to just be proactive in precaution and take good steps.
They need to be aware of what the CDC recommendations are about contact with people. When you have children in your home, or you have children coming and going from your home, it's not always a good idea to introduce another person coming and going who may have contact with 15 other people, because then you're increasing the number of contacts your child is having exponentially. So during this time frame, you may want to make sure that you have as few people coming over to your house as possible, that you're taking extra diligence in keeping your house clean, and that you're setting up a space for your child. This is a huge change for children. They've gone from a daily routine of going to school or daycare to not. And setting up a learning station for them at home, setting up something that provides them that stability, will be something that you can show in the future to anybody who ever questions what happened during this time period. Look what I did. I cut down my contacts, I increased my cleanliness, and I gave my child stability when nothing else in this world was.
And you bring up a good point about, with the kids and their perception and reinstilling that. And so obviously if guys are out there and they're in the unfortunate position where they're not getting the in-person custody that they should be getting, and their child says, well, why don't you come see me? The natural reaction is, well, your mom won't let me. But obviously that's not the answer you want to provide, because it could be used against you in court and maybe a form of parental alienation. And so, albeit not from a psychological or psychiatric perspective, but what should guys be telling their kids if, during this time, if they're not getting the type of in-person custody that they once, had?
As Scott said, it's very important not to just point the finger at the other parent, because that will be used against you later. Absolutely. It's important to speak to your children on their level. You wouldn't explain to a 4-year-old the same concepts and ideas that you'd explain to a 17-year-old. So, when you're speaking to younger children, trying to explain to them that, listen, right now, there's people that are sick, and we're just trying to keep you from getting sick and keep you as safe as possible. And your mother and I are working together to that end. Maybe a good way to explain it, versus an older child explaining to them, look, these issues happen. These pandemics have happened in the past. This one is the one that's most recent, but we get through it. We get by, and the CDC and the doctors and the government are there trying to help us out and make sure that we all do the safe thing and stay in our homes and make sure that this disease doesn't continue to spread.
And to kind of wrap it up, there's some guys out there where their divorce is now in their mind. It was pending, it was steaming along, and they may have had some court dates canceled. Maybe I should say this. Many of them think, well, it all should stop. But what should they be asking and looking for their attorney to be doing right now? Should they just not do anything on their file? Are there opportunities for these guys, whether it be about talking about strategy or trial preparation or refining discovery? Is there something that they should be looking to their attorney and saying, hey, I get it, courts are closed, but my divorce didn't just stop? What should they be doing?
Absolutely. We should still be moving forward. When you're preparing for a divorce, there's a million different issues that we have to look at. And there's always something that could be missed. And we can utilize this extra time to comb through all the details of the divorce, make sure nothing has been missed, and really go after each and every element as hard and heavy as we possibly can. In addition, new evidence is being created daily. When you're going through a divorce, how you work together, the finances, with the layoffs coming, finances have been changed, and that's going to need to be updated to the court. Custody and visitation schedules may be changing. That needs to be updated and something that may need to be discussed in court. And keeping the attorney apprised of all these changes and figuring out how these changes can still benefit you moving forward, even working through this very serious situation.
Well, Charles, that's such great stuff. I know we were able to cram some useful tips for guys out there. I know your perspective of what's happening in Virginia. I appreciate your time, and I know I hope everyone out there gained realistic and some useful information to help their family remain as positive as they can in these difficult times. And always remember that people like Charles and the rest of Cordell and Cordell, we're here to keep you and our clients and those affected by divorce as informed as they can on COVID-19, and we'll continue to have updates as we go along each week with new topics. And Charles, again, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, until next time, stay safe out there, and look forward to speaking to you again on the next topic. We'll cover some child support and alimony payments and how that's affected with the latest coronavirus. Until then, take care.
Thank you for listening to the Men's Divorce Podcast, presented by Cordell & Cordell. To schedule your appointment with a Cordell & Cordell attorney, please visit CordellCordell.com or call us at 1-866-DADS-LAW. Also, make sure to visit our partner websites, mensdivorce.com and dadsdivorce.com, and download our free Men's Divorce Source app available on the App Store for the latest divorce news and resources. Cordell & Cordell, a partner men can count on.